My own view is called an archetypal view, which is confusing to some people because it's not a word that people use all the time in their conversation. What I'm trying to get at is to try to figure out how the author is using Adam. What perspective does he have on Adam? And for that, I need to make sure I look at the literature carefully. My big concern is that we read the text carefully, but that we also read it as an ancient document, which it is. And so those things kind of frame my approach. The archetypal view is not a contrast to seeing Adam as a historical individual. I do indeed believe that Adam was a historical individual, and by that I mean he's a real person who truly existed and things of that sort. But at the same time, a person like that can take on a persona that's larger than that, that means something, has a significance beyond his individual existence. And I think that that's what Genesis is doing with Adam. When I view him as an archetype, I ask the question, is the text trying to tell me something that is uniquely true of the individual Adam, or is it trying to tell me something that's true of all of us? If it's true of all of us, then we're dealing with an archetypal presentation. So when I read about God forming Adam from the dust of the earth, I ask, what does forming refer to, and what does the dust of the earth have to do with? We find that what the Hebrew verb that's used there for forming is used in lots of other places for non-material activities. God forms the human spirit in us. And so in that sense, that word doesn't necessarily have to do with a material activity. Secondly, we find that when we look through Scripture, we discover that all of us are made from dust. When we look at the statements in the Psalms, statements in Paul, statements in Ecclesiastes, it talks about the fact that we are all formed from dust. And in that sense, that's something that's not unique to Adam. It's true of all of us. We can each be formed from dust and yet be born of woman. So being formed from dust would not preclude that he was born from a woman. So I take him as a historical individual, but I also believe that in the forming account, he's being treated archetypally, and that it's saying something about his identity that's true of all of us. For most of my career, I held a very traditional view about Adam and Eve and about Genesis 2, and was largely content with that. But what caused me to kind of come to a different position was really reading the text. One of the things that I've tried to discipline myself in over the years, and that I try to teach to my students, is that we need to read the text continually with fresh eyes, to look for perspectives we haven't seen before, to ask questions that we haven't thought to ask, to put pieces of Scripture together that we haven't necessarily seen together. And so it was really through that process that started to get me thinking that there was something going on here that I felt like I had been missing. I had been making certain assumptions. I had been looking at the text in modern terms. I hadn't been considering variations in how verbs or nouns are treated. And so in that sense, I started to see things in the text that were starting to point me in a different direction. You know, I think the future holds some exciting things as we consider the issues before us and try to think about them as Christians, as people who take the Bible seriously. The genome is a game changer. It's more information than we ever had, and we have to process what to do with it. The problem is that for many Christians, they say, I don't want science to trump the Bible. I don't want to be driven by science. And I agree with that. I think that's an important perspective to have. Yet at the same time, science and other fields as well may sometimes prompt us to look at an issue again. Now, I'm not the sort of person that wants to just take what science says and go in and reconfigure the Bible kind of, uncertainly, just to make it fit. But if science and what scientists are discovering can prompt me to ask new questions, places where I haven't asked those questions before, I want to do that. And I think we're in that kind of time period where we're being prompted to look again at the biblical material, to reconsider again the theology, not to make it conform, but just to make sure that we're reading it right. And I see that happening already, and I think that will continue to happen in the coming years.